is that the headline in the papers tomorrow, that Aston Villa were denied all that Champions League millions by a refereeing error? Or would you go with another headline?
Well, I think if you're from Birmingham, you're going to go with that. I mean, there's no question the referee has made a calamitous error. Now, the referee absolutely has that VAR to fall back on to make sure, and particularly in times when it has to be correct. And so the fact that he's jumped on it, I guess, shows a little bit of it. Well, shows a huge bit of inexperience, and certainly it's not a mistake I'm assuming he won't make again. Because I'm with you, I don't think there's any way Dia had the ball under control. And the goal should have been given. So he has messed up big time. Aston Villa will say that this has cost them. But the truth is, if you want to look at the big picture, this was supposed to be a cup final for Aston Villa, and they didn't turn up, and the performance didn't deserve anything other than the defeat. So, yeah, if you want to play one side of it, you can cry about it. But the truth is, they didn't deserve anything from this game.
Yeah, they were poor today, and goalkeeper Emi Martinez, might be his last game for Villa, was sent off. Yes, it's the correct decision there, but Matty Cash has put a hospital pass back to him, and he's the one that should get just as much criticism here as Emi Martinez. And you would think, with everything that was at stake, Stevie, and with Manchester United having just lost the Europa League final, and goodness knows in what headspace they were in, Aston Villa should have been better than this.
Well, we got two performances the complete opposite of where they should have come from. Quite frankly, I expected Villa to dominate this game. Instead, it was United. I expected Villa to be the team that were pushing forward, because they were the team that had something to play for. You know, United, in all honesty, had nothing to play for, but yet they were the team that came out and looked as though they had to win in order to make sure of qualification for the Champions League. But it never materialised, and I guess this says as much about United, to be honest. You know, you just don't know what you're going to get. They were the better team today. They weren't particularly great. They were blank going forward in the final third, really. I mean, the penalty they got as well, I thought was questionable. But yeah, Aston Villa, again, they're going to point the finger at that referee, but my goodness, they should be pointing the finger at themselves. They've had a great opportunity to go to Old Trafford and beat a bang average Manchester United, but they never turned up. So don't try and pin this on somebody else. Yes, it's a fact. Yes, the fact is the referee made a mistake. It's a huge mistake. But in terms of the performance and the 90 minutes, Villa need to look at themselves and not try and pin this on somebody else.
Yeah, well said. There is a little caveat to this, and it's the actual law to do with a goalkeeper in possession of the football. All it takes is one fingertip of downward pressure on the ball for it to constitute. It's not two hands on the ball, it's one fingertip of downward pressure on the ball to constitute control of the football. That's not what the United goalkeeper even had. He never at any stage had control of the ball, and as a result, it's an error by the referee, not once, but when he blew his whistle was the second error as well. He had to wait until the ball was in the back of the net. If he had, VAR could have had a look at that. It did go to VAR to only check when the whistle was blown, but if he just allowed an extra couple of seconds for the ball to end up in the back of the net, that goal would have stood. And who knows if Aston Villa right now would be in the Champions League for next season. Okay, let's go to Nottingham Forest against Chelsea. So Chelsea knew that if they won, that they were in, and it was a first half that was poor in most of the games. 0-0 at half time. I thought both sides kind of came out the blocks pretty well in the second half, especially Chelsea, and they got the goal after Pedro Neto's ball across goal was fired home at the back post by Levi Colwill. I thought Chelsea defended brilliantly today. Had a couple of moments at the end where Chris Wood probably should have scored. That was just to decide whether or not Nottingham Forest would be in the Conference League or the Europa League. They'll be playing in Europe, but it's not the Champions League. That goes to Chelsea. What did you make of their performance today?
Chelsea did enough. The truth, to be quite honest, the truth of this game, or the fact of this game is that this, for Nottingham Forest, it's woulda, coulda, shoulda, if, maybes. You know, Chris Wood in the first half, just before the interval, had the greatest chance to put Forest ahead, and we know what Forest are like when they get ahead defensively. A ball's whipped across, Woods gets ahead of all his defenders, Sanchez comes out, he gets ahead of Sanchez, and he doesn't make a good contact with the ball, because all he's got to do is put this on frame, and he puts it over the crossbar. That is the turning point in this game for Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest right now coulda, woulda, shoulda been celebrating winning this game in Champions League football.
Yeah, with the other results going the way that they did, a win would have got Nottingham Forest into the Champions League. The way that Chelsea have gone about this season, they were excellent to start the campaign. Not many of us had given them much of a shout. Then they kind of fell off a little bit. They've ended pretty strongly. This is without Cole Palmer being anywhere near the form he had last season. So they'll be playing Champions League next season. You saw what it meant to the fans if you were watching the game behind the goal and the celebrations from Maresca and his staff afterwards. There's still a lot of work to be done for Chelsea. They need a new goalkeeper. They need a striker. They played with Pedro Neto today as a kind of false nine. So they've got Champions League, and that'll be able to attract a whole host of new players. But can they spend wisely in the summer to get what they need?
Chelsea spend wisely. Are you serious? They've had a lot of goes at that and still haven't come up. Listen, Chelsea, I guess you've got to give Chelsea a lot of credit. You know, we always talk about the last part of the season is not about the way you perform. It's not about how great your football is. It's about winning games and getting enough points. And Chelsea, up until Christmas, had played some fantastic football and got points that way, victories that way, and were great to watch. And then they fell off the horse. And then this last stretch, this last 5 or 6 games, they have been, in terms of performance, bang average. Nothing more, nothing less, bang average. But they've gotten results. And they've gotten results exactly how they got a result today. They didn't create an awful lot. They weren't good on the eye. Cole Palmer, again, wasn't particularly great, wasn't really involved, certainly not in the areas that we want him to be in. But they kept a clean sheet. Yeah, I said Woods missed that opportunity, but they got the job done. So I guess for Maresca, yes, you want to go and add to your team and make it better. But I guess for Maresca, how does he win more games by either being bang average or being fantastic? If he can win games doing both consistently, then that's a step in the right direction, if you ask me. You know, what happened at the start of the season and what happened after Christmas, he has to figure a way out of getting rid of those types of results and figure out how, as he did at the end, how to get results without being at your best or even close to your best. If they can do that, then they'll be comfortably challenging in the top 4 next season. But if they can't, it's another season of what and maybe and we're not sure. All of those things that we've been doing for the last 3 or 4 seasons with Chelsea.
Look, they've not exactly had any issues with the Conference League. Yes, Betis is tough in the final, but it's not a competition they had any interest in playing in. They didn't even have Cole Palmer in their squad because they didn't need him for the group stages, but they're back in the Champions League and they deserve to be there. They've ended the season well. What about Nottingham Forest, Stevie? Because you've said coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Yeah.
They haven't kept a clean sheet since the start of April. Their form hasn't been great to end the season. I think they had that game against Everton, where if they'd won it, they would have ended up in the Champions League. So we were doing this on ESPN FC Live on Friday, myself and Don Hutchinson, like surprise of the season. And he went for Nottingham Forest. And I thought, yeah, but hold on a minute. If they don't get into the Champions League, they deserve the kudos for the season they've had. It's been brilliant because of last season, I think they finished 17th. So they've been great this season. But if you're a Forest fan and you were where you were and you were thinking Champions League, all these games, and you end the season like this based on a team that has been used to not conceding goals, Sells and his back line, yet you've not kept a clean sheet since April, Is it recency bias? Is it a good season rather than a great season, or what is it for Forest fans looking at where they might have ended up and where they have done?
Well, I think maybe this time next year, when they're just avoiding relegation, they'll look back and think of this season as a great season. And the truth is, you've got to kind of look at the big picture again. That's the best way to do it. And if you do that, then you can come up with rational reasons and answers. The fact that they were in third position for what, 6 months, 7 months of the 9 month season, and then they fall out the Champions League. Some will look at that and say, "Oh, that's disappointing, and it wasn't that great." But let's be honest, this team's in Europe, right? This is a team that this time last year was avoiding relegation. And if you'd said, by the way, next year you're just going to miss out in Champions League, they would be absolutely delighted. And again, the big picture is the way that Forest play, they surrender possession to the opposition. Now, if you're going to do that for 9 months, then there are going to be periods in that 9 months where it doesn't work. Because when you give possession to anybody and everybody, when you get it, on the rare occasions you get it, you have to do something with it. And if you don't, then you're going to rely on your defence. And again, if you're going to defend as often and as much as they do, in order to keep clean sheets, you have to be at your very best for 9 months. And that's not possible. It just isn't possible. And they've shown us that it's not possible. They've shown us that it's possible for maybe 6 months, 6.5. But to do it consistently, you can't get away with that. And that is what has bitten them in the backside in terms of the Champions League, is that when you give so much possession away, when you get it, you have to be at it. You have to be at your very best to take the opportunities to create and score goals. And they haven't been able to do that in this last phase of the season. And certainly from a defensive point, they haven't kept clean sheets. And that's why they fall outside the Champions League spots. But, I hope Forest fans, the majority of them, will be thinking, you know what, this is way better than what happened last year or the season before. And let's try and build on it.
It's just great to see them back in Europe. I think the Olympiastadion in Munich was the last time they qualified for a European competition. That's when they played in Europe. But it's weird the way football works. If they'd started the season like they ended it, but then hit form and kind of had that momentum going and then got European football late on, it's a totally different feeling, but it's what they might have had. But they'll be playing in European football next season, albeit not the competition they wanted. But Chelsea get into the Champions League. Now, the other team that get into the Champions League by finishing fifth, it was the only kind of twist in this one. Newcastle lost at home to Everton, who had very little to play for. And up until Manchester United went ahead at Old Trafford, Newcastle were out of the top five. But with Villa not able to get the point they needed in Manchester, Newcastle went back into the top five despite losing. This was a strange game because for all that Newcastle have had a brilliant season winning the League Cup, they did look nervy in this one. Whether it was the three at the back that Eddie Howe's gone to of late, which he subsequently switched to a four, whether it was Isak not being fully fit, whether it was Anthony Gordon not doing much in the first half. What did you make of Newcastle's performance in this game? And they don't care how they got there. Are they slightly fortunate to lose a game and still get into the Champions League?
Wow, are they fortunate? They're fortunate that they lose at home and Villa get beaten by Man United. They're fortunate, particularly when you consider the Rodgers opportunity. But at the end of the day, I think overall, again, big picture, they deserve to be in the Champions League. Today was a huge surprise for everybody. I mean, the result, the performance. But then the opposition haven't been giving anything away pretty much since Moyes appeared back at Goodison. So in a lot of ways, it shouldn't be such a shock that they didn't win. But considering the importance of the game, considering that Everton didn't really have much to play for, and considering what Newcastle had to play for, the whole day was strange. I mean, even at the end, they were celebrating, but there was a little. It wasn't quite overflowing, and there was something missing because they realised how lucky they got. But they got lucky, and at the end of the day, hey, you better be lucky than good sometimes, and there's no question that today Newcastle were lucky and certainly weren't good.
Is it just nerves, Stevie? Because that Chelsea game, they beat them 2-0. The place was rocking. The team fed off the fans. Today, that atmosphere wasn't quite the same as the Chelsea game, and it kind of affected the players a little bit.
To be honest, I think Newcastle fans didn't give Everton the respect that they deserved. I think Newcastle fans thought everyone were coming here to get ready for the holidays, and that's just not what happened. Everton came here to not lose the game first and foremost, and then to try and win it, and they did both. So I think the fans should have been a little bit more concerned about Everton, and instead I think they thought it was going to be a 3 or 4-0 when they turned up, and then of course you start hearing what's going over at Old Trafford, and then you lose a goal. All of a sudden you realise that, oh my goodness, this whole day's falling apart. So yeah, listen, we all expected Newcastle to win, but I think we should all have respected Everton a little bit more, and certainly a team under Moyes that never gives anything away, regardless whether there's anything in it for them or not.
Here's the bottom line. The 5 teams that have won the most games in the Premier League this season are the top 5. Now, the table doesn't lie. It's not about one refereeing error. It's not about one dodgy penalty. It's not about one chance that was missed when it should have been scored. It's 38 games that take place. Are the best 5 teams in the Premier League going to be playing in the Champions League next season? Through their league form, of course, Spurs getting in through the Europa League.
That's a tough question on Aston Villa. I honestly don't believe that. I don't believe that Newcastle or Chelsea. I couldn't sit here and turn around and say that Newcastle and Chelsea are better than Aston Villa. I couldn't in all conscience do that. So I'm glad that the 5 teams that went through are the teams that won the most games. I think I like that. I think that's good. But in terms of who's better than who, I don't think you can say that Chelsea and Newcastle are better than Aston Villa.